They were not distinguished scholars, nor eloquent orators or powerful rulers. On the contrary, they were simple fishermen, despised tax collectors, and even individuals with radical political views. Yet these 12 men became the foundation of the Christian church. Those who gave up everything, including their very lives, to live and die for their faith. These were the 12 apostles of Jesus, real people with real stories, whose deaths were not endings, but the beginning of a wave of faith that would spread across the earth. Their journey began with a gentle invitation, "Follow me." But that call carried with it a cross, not one to merely observe, but to bear for a lifetime. The first to be mentioned is John, the disciple famously referred to as the one Jesus loved. He wasn't just close to Jesus during his public ministry, but remained with him at the cross, the only male disciple present at Jesus' crucifixion. After the ascension, John served the church in Ephesus. According to tradition, he was thrown into boiling oil, but miraculously survived. Eventually, he was exiled to the island of Patmos, where he received divine revelations and authored the Book of Revelation, one of the most profound writings in the New Testament. It was on this desolate island that John wrote about the end times, judgment, and the ultimate triumph of the Lamb. The Book of Revelation is more than prophecy. It's a song of hope. It proclaims that though the church may suffer persecution and believers endure trials, ultimate victory belongs to Christ. John's life proves that martyrdom doesn't always mean death. Sometimes, a long life of prayer, writing, solitude, and perseverance becomes a quiet, powerful martyrdom in itself. His loneliness stands as a mirror to those today who feel forgotten because of their faith. God never forgets his servants. In stark contrast to John's longevity, his brother James became the first apostle to be martyred. One of Jesus' inner circle, James witnessed sacred moments like the Transfiguration and Jesus' agony in Gethsemane. After the resurrection, James continued to preach boldly in Jerusalem. His courage and conviction made him a target for Herod Agrippa I, who ordered his execution by the sword. Historian Eusebius notes a touching story. The guard who escorted James to his execution was so moved by his faith that he confessed Christ and was executed alongside him. Even at death's door, James inspired conversion. His martyrdom ignited courage in the early church and confirmed that true faith often demands a costly sacrifice. Standing beside him in legacy is another James, James the Less, son of Alphaeus. Though less visible in Scripture, church tradition holds that he led the church in Jerusalem after Peter's departure. He was known for a prayer life so intense that his knees were said to be calloused like a camel's. When asked to renounce his faith, he stood atop the temple and declared Jesus as the Christ. He was thrown down, and when the fall didn't kill him, he was stoned to death. James the Less didn't stumble into martyrdom. It was the culmination of a lifetime of prayer and steadfast devotion. His story is a tribute to all who serve faithfully behind the scenes, unrecognized by the world but honored by heaven. Peter, the apostle who denied Christ 3 times, later became the rock upon which the church was built. From a fiery and impulsive fisherman, he became the leader of the early church. At Pentecost, he preached the first public sermon, healed the sick, and shepherded believers. Eventually, he was arrested in Rome under Emperor Nero. Out of humility, he requested to be crucified upside down, believing he was unworthy to die in the same way as Jesus. It is said that, as he was led to his death, Peter prayed not for deliverance but for strength to endure suffering for the sake of Christ. The man who once wept bitterly after denying Jesus now died triumphantly, fully restored. Today, the Basilica of St. Peter stands on what is believed to be the site of his crucifixion, a testament to his unwavering faith. Andrew, the brother of Peter, was among the first disciples called by Jesus. Though often overshadowed by his more outspoken brother, Andrew had a humble boldness. He introduced others to Jesus, including the boy with 5 loaves and 2 fish, sparking one of the most famous miracles in the Gospels. After Pentecost, Andrew traveled to Scythia, parts of Eastern Europe, and finally Greece. In Patras, he was sentenced to death by crucifixion. Andrew requested to be crucified on an X-shaped cross, now known as St. Andrew's Cross, feeling unworthy to die as Jesus had. While bound to the cross, Andrew preached to the crowd for 2 days until he died. His words, echoing through the streets, caused some to reconsider their own beliefs. Even his executioners, according to legend, were so moved they tried to release him, but Andrew refused, embracing his martyrdom as his final act of faith. Thomas, often remembered for his doubts, should instead be celebrated for his courage. After questioning Jesus' slow resurrection, he gave the powerful declaration, "My Lord and my God," one of the clearest confessions of Jesus' divinity in the New Testament. Tradition holds that Thomas traveled to India, establishing what is now known as the Mar Church. He preached across southern India, converting many and facing intense opposition. Eventually, Thomas was pierced by spears and died near Chennai. His tomb remains a pilgrimage site today. His legacy reminds us that doubts can lead to deeper faith, and that those who struggle can become the most passionate witnesses. Bartholomew, often identified with Nathanael, was praised by Jesus as an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit. Though he may not have been as prominent in the Gospels, Bartholomew's legacy as a missionary is profound. He is believed to have preached in India, Mesopotamia, and particularly Armenia. In Armenia, he reportedly converted the king, which angered the king's brother and led to Bartholomew's martyrdom. The methods of his death vary across sources, but the most widely accepted tradition says he was flayed alive and then beheaded. Artistic depictions often show him holding a knife and his own skin. This gruesome form of execution illustrates both the cruelty faced by early Christians and the unbreakable faith that sustained them. Bartholomew's life reminds us that a pure heart, even if quiet and modest, can withstand immense suffering for the sake of truth. Matthew, also called Levi, was a tax collector before meeting Jesus. At that time, tax collectors were reviled as corrupt collaborators with Rome. But when Jesus said, "Follow me," Matthew left everything behind to follow him. His transformation is a remarkable testimony of grace, from a symbol of greed to a herald of God's kingdom. Matthew authored the Gospel bearing his name, emphasizing Jesus as the fulfillment of Old Testament prophecies. He wrote primarily to a Jewish audience, bridging their past to the promise of the Messiah. After Pentecost, Matthew is believed to have traveled to Ethiopia and possibly Persia. According to various traditions, he was martyred while celebrating Mass, stabbed in the back by a swordsman. His story speaks volumes about redemption, that no matter your past, God can use your life powerfully. Philip, one of the earliest disciples called by Jesus, had a curious and practical spirit. When faced with feeding the multitude, Philip immediately focused on the impossibility. 8 months' wages would not buy enough bread for each one to have a bite. Yet Jesus used this moment to demonstrate divine provision. Philip's post-resurrection ministry led him to Phrygia in Asia Minor. He reportedly settled in the city of Hierapolis, where he healed the sick and converted many, including the wife of a Roman proconsul. This angered the authorities, and Philip was arrested. Tradition holds that he was crucified upside down and stoned. Remarkably, even while dying, he continued to preach, forgiving his persecutors and asking God to open their eyes to the gospel. Simon the Zealot, not to be confused with Simon Peter, was part of the Zealots, a Jewish political movement determined to overthrow Roman rule. His background indicates he was once passionate about national liberation, but Jesus redirected Simon's zeal from political revolution to spiritual transformation. Simon's missionary journeys are uncertain, though many accounts place him in Egypt, North Africa, and Persia. One account says he was sawn in half. Another claims he was crucified. Regardless of how he died, Simon's life demonstrates that God can transform radical passions into instruments of peace. It's a message especially relevant in our time of political division and ideological extremism. Passion, when surrendered to God, can build rather than destroy. Jude Thaddeus, also known as Judas, son of James, not to be confused with Judas Iscariot, is one of the lesser-known apostles. He is the author of the Epistle of Jude, a powerful short letter urging believers to contend for their faith and beware of false teachers. His words are fiery, filled with conviction, and speak with urgency to believers today. Tradition holds that Jude Thaddeus ministered in Mesopotamia and Persia. He is often paired with Simon the Zealot in stories of their joint missions and shared martyrdom. Some accounts say he was beaten to death with a club. Others claim he was axed or crucified. Jude is now regarded as the patron saint of hopeless causes, fitting for a man who preached hope in dark places. And then there is Judas Iscariot, the most infamous of the 12. His name has become synonymous with betrayal. Chosen by Jesus and entrusted with the group's finances, Judas walked with Christ for years. Yet for 30 silver coins he handed over the Son of God with a kiss. The Gospels portray his remorse as deep and overwhelming. After realizing what he had done, Judas returned the money and tried to undo his betrayal, but the consequences were irreversible. He hanged himself in despair. In Acts, another account says he fell in a field and died gruesomely. Judas's story serves as a grave warning. Being close to Jesus outwardly is not enough. It's the heart's loyalty that matters. His life is a somber reflection on the dangers of unrepentant guilt and missed grace. What ties all 12 apostles together is not perfection, but transformation. They were flawed, frightened, sometimes slow to understand, even betraying and doubting. But in the hands of Jesus, their lives became testimonies of faith, endurance, and ultimate victory. Today, their stories continue to inspire millions. In each apostle, we find a reflection of ourselves, our doubts, our failures, our hopes, and our longing for meaning. We may not be called to face martyrdom, but we are called to carry our cross daily. Their sacrifices challenge us to ask, what are we living for? Would we die for what we believe? More importantly, are we truly living for Christ in the everyday moments? The quiet acts of kindness, the brave stands for truth, the silent endurance of hardship, the unwavering commitment to love. The apostles did not die in vain. Their blood became the seed of the church, and their voices still call out across the centuries, follow him. May their lives and their deaths remind us that the story of faith is still being written, through you, through me, and through all who dare to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. May their lives and their deaths remind us that the story of faith is still being written, through you, through me, and through all who dare to follow the Lamb wherever he goes. Let us also remember this. The apostles were not heroes by the world's standards. They were not born into nobility, nor were they trained in palaces. They came from boats and tax booths, from fishing nets and dusty roads. And yet, their obedience, their transformation, and their willingness to surrender everything made them world changers. The gospel was carried on their shoulders, not by force, but by love. Not through armies, but through sacrifice. Not with riches, but with wounds. In a modern world consumed by comfort, image, and convenience, their legacy disrupts us. It challenges the complacent. It confronts the lukewarm. Because it dares us to look at our own faith and ask, is it costing me anything? Am I still following Christ if it means giving up status, security, or even my own will? True faith isn't shown in our Sunday appearances, but in Monday's struggles. It isn't proven by public acclaim, but by private obedience. Like the apostles, we are called to follow not just to the mountaintop, but also into the garden, the prison, the cross. As we reflect on their final moments, on crosses, in foreign lands, facing blades and stones, we must ask ourselves, what legacy will I leave? Will my life echo with courage, grace, and truth? Will others find Christ because of how I lived and how I was willing to die to self? You see, the Great Commission didn't end with them. It began. It continues now, through our voices, our love, our stories. Every act of forgiveness, every moment of courage, every time we speak hope into darkness, we walk in the apostles' footsteps. So let this not just be a history lesson. Let this be a call to action. The world still needs witnesses like Peter and John, like Mary Magdalene and Paul. It still needs voices crying in the wilderness. It still needs lives laid down in love. You are part of that story. You are called as they were called. And though the cost is high, the reward is eternal. The Lamb still walks ahead. The Spirit still empowers. The cross still beckons. Will you follow?